Trek. Too hot for TV.
Welcome back to Star Trek Too Hot for TV. We are the podcast that for at least one episode talks about all things Star Trek Extended Universe. Some say it might be jumping the shark, others a bold new reboot. But in the gap between Too Hot for TV Doctor Who seasons, we'll be doing a couple of episodes dealing with spin-offery from other shows. But I can't do this alone, so I have two guests with me to boldly go where this podcast hasn't been before. It's Ben and Mark from In The Timelash, another rebooted franchise.
Hello.
How we doing, lads?
Hello. This is nice.
Isn't it?
Chatting about Star Trek
I know, wild.
together. That'll be lovely.
Yeah, because you don't ever talk about Star Trek, do you?
Not audibly. That was a weird way to put it. No, obviously I spend most of my working week writing about Star Trek. But actually nobody ever, I never get invited on the seventh rule or Star Trek and chill. No. So this is quite nice. I'm probably too sweary for the Americans. I think that's kind of what the problem
Exactly.
is.
And, Americans have a certain sort of seriousness. Whenever I've tried to listen to Star Trek podcasts, apart from Joe Ford's one, I can never really engage with the people. I just find them a bit too serious, which is why, when I thought I'm going to do a Star Trek episode, you guys were the first guys I called upon who can bring some levity to the serious subject of Star Trek.
I don't think that's true because you mentioned Joe Ford. Is he busy tonight?
No, I told him I was doing this, and I don't think he's speaking to me now.
I think there is a big difference between. I always remember when I would get my two magazines that I would get. Maybe 12 years ago, like younger, with Doctor Who magazine and Star Trek magazine, and I loved Doctor Who magazine. Like it had a sense of humor, had a sense of gossip. Like it didn't take itself or the show too seriously. You sometimes got out and out criticism of the show.
Yeah.
Fair's fair. Star Trek magazine was always the most dry. It was the driest read. There was no sense of humor to it. You got like a boost of news about what was happening in the new series, but it was so reverential and it was so box ticking, and there was none of that in-depth sense of humor that Doctor Who magazine used to have. And I feel like you mentioned some podcasts. I don't know if you're friends with them, Mark, but I also get the sense that Doctor Who podcasts and Star Trek podcasts are two very different beasts as well.
Yes.
I suspect so. I mean, on that, I find writing about Star Trek sometimes a bit more difficult than writing about Doctor Who for that reason.
Well, look, gents, I must start this podcast like I start my Doctor Who ones and ask you both, when did you become a Star Trek fan? So, Ben, as the avid magazine reader, let's come to you first.
Very young, probably before Doctor Who. It was. I don't necessarily think my dad was a fan in the way that we are fans. It occupies our thoughts to an obsessional point, or it's a job. But he would watch every Wednesday on BBC Two Star Trek: The Next Generation from when it started broadcast in the UK. So kind of like the beginning of the 90s, and we would watch it every Wednesday. He made a point of it, and it was great. Like that whole period expanded out into kind of general BBC cult, Next Generation, original series, Deep Space Nine, and then there was like Sliders and the New Avengers and all that, and then Thunderbirds on a Sunday and all that kind of stuff. And these are all kind of programs that he'd grown up with, original series Thunderbirds, when he was a kid. And so having the BBC in the 90s show these again, we would sit down after dinner and watch Star Trek, and it became a really, you become fans of things, less about the appreciation for the show and more about where it emotionally sits in your life, in your development, than the people that you share it with. And this is one of these things. And then in school, our friend Sean, he loved Star Trek. So that was immediately something I shared with my dad. It was something I shared with Sean. And Sean's older brother was mental into Star Trek. He was one of us. We would sneak round to his house of a Saturday or after school, and we would look through his like VHSs. And the bit where when the BBC stopped having first run Next Gen and it became something from Sky, his brother was buying the VHSs, So we got to see episodes, and then he got Sky, and so we got to catch up with the episodes of Deep Space Nine and Voyager and all that kind of stuff. And it was pure. It was a very living part of my childhood in a way that Doctor Who wasn't. So from at least the age of 8, I've known and loved Star Trek.
Amazing. What about you?
It's funny because when I first started out in this content game 2 years ago, I got asked if I wanted to write about Star Trek. And I was like, oh, well, like I do like Star Trek, but I wouldn't call myself a fan. But yeah, I could definitely take a look at some articles and do some things. But then actually I kind of looked back over my life and I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Because I've got so many, in fact, actually, arguably more memories of sort of childhood experiences and sort of childhood family memories with Star Trek than I ever did with Doctor Who. Doctor Who's very much friendships, and the friendships that continue to kind of form into my adult life, which Star Trek hasn't given me. Because I think Ben and I first bonded over Doctor Who, so that, but although saying that, my friend Leo, who's the only other Doctor Who fan at my school, I distinctly remember going to one of his birthday parties. He was dressed as Kirk, and I was like, my mum made me like a little Spock outfit. So it was like a kind of long blue, a sort of long sleeves blue shirt. She did like all the little fucking silver sleeve things, the badge, and I had the like pointy ears and all that kind of thing. So yeah, but I mean, I was 8 years old at the time. It wasn't like, I was 28 years old at the time. So there's that. And I remember getting All Good Things on VHS for Christmas because I really wanted to know how Star Trek The Next Generation would end. And looking back on that, I'm like, how the hell did I know that the finale was coming up? And how did I know that I wanted that video and that? But anyway, I got that. And I remember Christmas Day, my uncle being absolutely raging that I had it. And him sort of pulling my mum aside and saying, well, he'll just spoil it for everybody. So imagine my delight 30 years later when I got the first 6 episodes of Star Trek Picard season 3 as like review copies. But I just say, yeah, you thought that was bad, mate. Look what I've got now. 6 new hours of Star Trek, baby. So there's that. And then kind of one sort of big memory of I think my earliest Star Trek memory is the episode The Emissary from Star Trek The Next Generation, where Worf's sort of ex comes aboard and they have this kind of sort of hypersexual, sort of aggressive sort of fight with these aliens on the holodeck. And I remember being utterly terrified, not by the sexual undercurrent, by the just the really freaky monsters that they were fighting.
It's like a guy with like a Skeletor.
Well, it's actually Frank Langella's Skeletor mask from Masters of the Universe that the monster's wearing. So yeah, that freaked me out, and the Nausicaans used to freak me out as well. So stuff like that. So yeah, like those. Yeah, I guess I'm a big Star Trek fan.
A lot of the earliest memories I have are of being scared because of Star Trek. I remember there's an episode which is spooky. It's called Where Silence Has Lease, and it's one of the first episodes in the second season of Next Generation, and it's just this kind of like a nebula that has a face, and it prompts Captain Picard, or I can't remember exactly what it does, but it gets Captain Picard to blow up the ship, like to set the auto-destruct for the ship, and then like everyone gets half an hour to think about their death before the ship is going to be exploded. And as a child, and I think that I must have been like 6 or something like that, the idea first of death just being very matter-of-factly presented to you, and secondly that you would have knowledge of death and that you'd have half an hour to not freak out because of your Starfleet training fucking terrified me. And I remember the black oil ooze guy from Skin of Evil that killed Tasha Yar.
Yeah. Which now looks like it's more from 60s Star Trek than anything that was in the 80s or 90s, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, it's a guy who's put on a couple of plastic bin bags and they put molasses all over him,
Yeah.
who then just kills mercilessly.
Yeah. So I think I'm a casual Star Trek fan. And I say this as someone I realise who's recording a podcast about Star Trek right now. I have a lot of fond memories of Star Trek in the 90s, but I've not seen it all. I've definitely not seen... I think I've probably seen all of the original series, though I couldn't tell you for certain. I've seen all the movies countless times, and I've seen bits. But there's something very nostalgic about that 90s thing of like... it was, as you say, it was on all the time. And I think I was a Doctor Who fan first, and I think it's that thing of... There were Star Trek fans at school, so I couldn't talk to people about Doctor Who, but I could speak to them about Star Trek because everybody wanted to talk about Star Trek because it was on. It felt like it was on every night of the week at points, but it probably wasn't. And I did collect some of the videos, and then in later years, I've watched all the Picard and Strange New Worlds and stuff like that. So I'm not 100% committed to the point. I don't think I will ever watch all of Star Trek. I don't think it'll happen. But I've watched more Star Trek than any normal person should have, and I had toys and stuff as well as a kid. I've been to a Star Trek convention and got a photo with William Shatner.
Wow.
So that's fairly committed as a fan, I think, on one level to part with what was quite a lot of money even at the time, I think.
I think that's fine. I think like a lot of people will be like, it's the Star Trek fans can be as snobbish as Doctor Who fans. And everybody's very quick to decide that if you don't like a particular iteration of Star Trek, you're somehow not a fan.
Right. Or if you do like a particular iteration of Star Trek as well. There's that kind of whole sort of anti-Lower Decks, anti-sort of Star Trek the Animated Series, anti-Discovery kind of element of it.
Yeah, well, there's definitely the people who will just stick to 90s Star Trek, and not even 90s Star Trek, like specifically like from about Star Trek 5 all the way to Star Trek Insurrection. So from about 1989 to 98 at the latest. Like, there's some people where that's just purism for them.
I'm kind of, with Screen Rant, I kind of sort of specialise in DS9, which is weird because I can't remember the last time I watched DS9 from start to finish. But anyway, I love it, and it's one of my favourite Star Trek shows. But I think there's still a bit of a negativity in some corners of fandom towards DS9 because it's not proper Star Trek because there's like a war going on, and Sisko's like a bit of a bad dude and all that kind of thing. And it's like, but the whole thing of DS9 is, well, what does Gene Roddenberry's vision mean when you meet an implacable enemy that forces you to question whether or not you're doing the right thing, and ultimately you come out and go, oh no, we've got the right viewpoint here, we just need to defend it. It's just, you just basically break down Star Trek and then rebuild it again and go, yeah, it's still Star Trek.
You've heard about the putting the blindfold on the bust of Gene Roddenberry in Rick Berman's office.
No, please tell this story.
So Rick Berman obviously was he was the adoptive father of Star Trek after Gene Roddenberry. Deep Space Nine is a bit more risky because as a producer he was more hands off. It was your Ira Stephen Bear and your Robert Hewitt Wolves, Ronald D. Moores that really made Deep Space Nine. It was more Voyager that Rick Berman took more of a personal interest in. And there was this story that there is during kind of the writers, like start of the season, they're pitching stories. They got 26 episodes, 24, 26 episodes to fill. They would gather in Berman's office. He had a bust of Gene Roddenberry on the desk. And if somebody pitched something that was against Gene Roddenberry's ethos, or that Roddenberry would frown upon, the idea that like there would be some sort of conflict that arose from people within a Starfleet crew, he would put the blindfold down over the bust's eyes as if you have angered the great bird of the galaxy. And people were just like, I can't believe
Amazing.
it cut so many avenues of storytelling off
It's
because
nuts.
they were. But Ira Stephen Bear used to say, just write what you want on Deep Space Nine. I'll take care of Rick. And I think Rick
Nice.
Berman
Yeah.
in the end it just got tired of. You just went, fine, do what you want.
And I think also Michael Pillar needs to takes a bit of credit, I think, for DS9 as well, because it was his, I think, idea that, well, how do we get around Gene Roddenberry's thing of no conflict? Because they were obviously developing DS9 while Roddenberry was alive, but obviously they didn't really kind of get into the weeds of it until after he died. But they were going, well, we put it on a space station where you've got a bunch of people who aren't Starfleet. There you go. And then you can have as much conflict as you want between the kind of main characters because they're from all different sort of groups and sort of social structures.
But in the 90s, Deep Space Nine was my favourite one because it was so action packed and exciting. It felt like. I remember seeing Way of the Warrior at a Doctor Who local group where they got it sent over from America, and what they used to do. The first 2 hours of the meeting would be non-Doctor Who stuff, and it'd just be stuff that came over from America, and then the last 3 hours was showing rare Doctor Who episodes.
5-hour Doctor Who group meeting.
It was a Saturday night, but it was largely. What else are you going to do on a Saturday night when you're 14 years old living in Birmingham? They hadn't invented fingering yet, I think.
So you wouldn't get that. You wouldn't get that on an American Star Trek podcast.
You would be asked to leave.
And leave I would. But it was very much like a group where they did viewings, and so it was like they would fill an entire evening, and then there'd be little chats in between. But you could go there and literally speak to nobody and just watch stuff if you wanted to, or people would go into the other room and have a chat. But it was just a way, I think, to start with, especially to see things you just couldn't get, which was quite exciting. Like I remember seeing they showed like an episode of Ace of Wands from the 70s, and then it'd be like the latest Voyager or something like that, and it was just an exciting. The Sliders pilot I saw there as well. Like it was that sort of stuff. So I'm familiar enough with Star Trek. I'm not familiar with its extended universe. I think I could probably count on one hand like the odd comic or book or something that I read when I was maybe 12 years old. What about you guys?
I think because Star Trek was on kind of all the time in the night, or at least it felt like it was. Like it felt you were never too far away from Star Trek in the 90s. I didn't really do all that much extended media. The one thing I do remember though was The Return, the William Shatner novel, where Kirk's brought back from the dead by the Borg, and like Scotty and Spock and McCoy all get involved, and it's the next gen cast, and it's just this big sort of First Contact Star Trek Generations sort of sequel. So I definitely remember getting that for Christmas, I think, and sort of devouring that over the kind of Christmas holidays. But other than that, I think it was even the games actually, like Elite Force I remember really enjoying, which was the kind of Voyager sort of first person shooter on the PC. But yeah, in terms of like comic books and novels and stuff like that, I never really kind of went in for that all that much.
The majority of extended universe Star Trek stuff was pocketbooks, novels, and comics. Star Trek didn't really need to go for the extended universe because there was such a period where it still had new stuff coming out, and it was always just to flog the VHS and the DVD and the Blu-ray of the mother show. So I used to. There was a few books. I do that thing that I think is probably familiar to Doctor Who fans, is that if there was an exciting episode coming up, something like, say, Flashback, the 30th anniversary episode for Star Trek Voyager, where Tuvok has memories of serving on the Excelsior with Captain Sulu. I personally didn't have cable or Sky, so I went out to Forbidden Planet in Edinburgh and got the novelization of Flashback and read it that way. They published the novelizations of the Star Trek Next Gen movies before the movie had been released, so I read Insurrection and I read Nemesis before I actually saw the movie, which was great because there was bits that sometimes were a little confusing in the movie that suddenly, no, I understand what that is supposed to be. So mostly, if I was buying anything extended universe, it was the novelization of special episodes, so you could spoil it for friends. I never really, I would get the odd kind of book out from the library if it was original fiction. So I remember reading, like it was always the Borg. Everyone was so excited about the Borg. So all the stuff that you wanted to read were Borg stories and all that kind of stuff. In the 90s, it was very much the modern Trek. I remember it's something that I have grown more and more to love, the original Star Trek. But at the time, wasn't all that interested in original Star Trek and wasn't all that interested in any of their extended universe stuff. So it was mostly Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, Voyager kind of stuff. And it was only books. Comics weren't that freely available, and there's nothing like Big Finish for Star Trek. There is no, I mean, I know we're going to talk about an audio story in a moment, but that is an aberration. That's not the main channel of your fandom if you can't get hold of the actual thing. But it's a lot of the extended universe is very standalone because the parent show was very standalone. They're just episodes that fit in that that don't have a wider consequence for the characters that carries over into the TV show.
What I've found interesting with the extended media now in sort of the 2020s is that it's got there's two long running comic books now. So there's Star Trek 2022 because that's the year it started, but that's the kind of subtitle for it, which is this kind of long sweeping storyline about Sisko coming back from the wormhole to kind of step in and sort out this sort of god war between Kahless and all the gods of Star Trek. And it's kind of continued on with kind of other adventures for Sisko, and then you've got Worf on the Defiant, and it all feels like we've joked about this. I don't think on this podcast, but in a group chat that we have about the kind of state of Doctor Who comics during the Capaldi era and a bit into the Whittaker era, where it was kind of even worse than Big Finish, where it would just be this rotating sort of roulette wheel of kind of, we'll put this character with this character and this character and that character. And it's like Sisko's new crew is, so it's Captain Sisko. He's the captain of the USS Theseus. Picard, for some reason, has deemed fit to put Data as Sisko's first officer to keep an eye on him. So this takes place between Insurrection and Nemesis, which I don't think is that long, but that's kind of where it's supposed to take place. Yeah. Dr. Crusher's on there to keep an eye on Sisko because he's a god now. Like, what's that all about? Scotty is the chief engineer because obviously Scotty turned up in the 24th century. Tom Paris from Voyager's the pilot of the ship. And then you've got an Andorian who's like a descendant of Hoshi Sato from Enterprise. And it's like, all right, okay, just maybe calm down a little bit.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, well, it's good to know that that's the default point of any franchise.
It seems to be now, fans. Definitely seems to be that kind of like, oh, what would it be like if all of these characters coexisted at this one point in time and then never mentioned it again?
Yeah. I did, probably about 6-7 months ago on the podcast, I did this Next Generation 11th Doctor crossover comic. And Michael Mills, who was on that, I'm sure was saying basically that the Star Trek comics cross over with loads and loads of other franchises as well.
They do. There's like a
Star Trek versus Green Lantern.
Yeah, and the X.
It was Star Trek versus Planet of the Apes as well.
Yes,
there is. I quite want to read that actually.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, there's Star Trek versus the X-Men, Star Trek versus the Transformers. There's loads.
Well, maybe we'll be back here for some of those if this doesn't completely sync the podcast format.
Too hot for TV.
So, the first thing we're going to do today is Spock versus Q. Spock versus Q was released on the 1st of November 1999. It was written by Cecilia Fanner. It was published by Simon & Schuster Audio Works. It starred Leonard Nimoy as Spock and John Delancey as Q. Now, news at the time. This is proof that Doctor Who fans and Star Trek fans are more serious, because I did a bit of digging around and the only news I can find is that of the deaths of people. So, James Goldstone had died, who directed Where No Man Has Gone Before and the first season episode What a Little Girl's Made Of, and Robert F. Shulgar, editor of Search for Spock, died. And that's the only news that I can find. I'm sure maybe there was other stuff, but I certainly can't find any scandalous rumours or, anything about Captain Picard opening a Sainsbury's or something like that. Other releases at the time, UK VHS release, we had Deep Space Nine Volume 7.12 and Voyager 5.12. There was also the 7 of 9 collection Volume 1 and the Star Trek movie collection. They were all on VHS in the UK. Then there was the Voyager novel, Captain Proton, Defender of the Earth. The New Frontiers novel, The Quiet Place. The New Frontiers novel, Dark Allies. And an anthology called New Worlds, New Civilizations. On television, it was Voyager. It was Riddles, Dragon's Teeth, One Small Step, and the Voyager Conspiracy. So there was a lot of Star Trek in November of 1999.
I had a very dark period. Well, not I wasn't that dark, but I had a pretty miserable period. I'd graduated from film school, couldn't get a job in what I wanted to do, and I had to take a kind of customer service job in this charity shop. And basically, to get through it, I would just prop my phone up on the till. I watched all of Star Trek Voyager from start to finish. And even then, I still couldn't tell you what any of those episodes are. I think, is Dragon's Teeth the one with the... no, I can't remember.
Voyager Conspiracy is pretty good. Is that the one where 7 of 9 has to, go back in time to when Voyager was first launched because there's...
Isn't that relativity? Isn't that... No,
relative, could be relativity.
That's Chakotay when he goes back in time. There's a lot of time travel in Voyager.
Look, I mean, when you look at each of the seasons of Next Generation, it has each of the episodes have such personality. You really find friends, you recognize friends in those episode lists. Voyager seems like just the same fucking thing over and over again. They just get better at doing it from season 4, 5, and 6. So yeah, you're right. I've heard those titles. I can't tell you what happened to any of those fucking episodes. And it doesn't matter because they'll just hit the reset button at the end of each episode and it'll have no consequence for the next.
Favorite thing I learned recently about Voyager was in season 6, Ronald D. Moore joins Voyager because DS9's finished. But he writes the script for one episode and he does the story for one episode. And I always wondered why that was. And
he's the one that tells the blindfold story. That the moment he saw that was part of the writing room, he just checked out and went, fuck.
But he sort of says that he left Voyager because they had no interest in doing kind of long form stories. And he kind of fell out with Brannon Braga, who he'd written Star Trek movies with and some of the best episodes of The Next Generation with and all that. And Brannon Braga kind of says, well, I feel bad about us kind of falling out at the time. But actually, if we hadn't, he probably wouldn't have gone on to do Battlestar Galactica. Because all the stuff he wanted to do on Voyager, which was, all right, all these people are stranded in this unexplored region of space. Why do they all just follow Janeway? Surely there's going to be people on that ship who are well, why is she the captain? We're not Starfleet anymore. We could be anything we want to be. And they never wanted to do it. And then obviously he does it on Battlestar. So that's kind of a cool thing.
Probably just as well, to be honest.
Yeah.
Maybe we never would have got Battlestar if he'd done it all on Voyager.
Yeah.
Too hot for TV.
As the end of the 20th century nears, an asteroid is hurtling towards Earth. When it hits, the impact will result in the end of all life on the planet. Ambassador Spock travels back in time to subtly warn Earth's inhabitants of impending doom, while calling into question humanity's priorities. However, before the truth is told, the all-powerful being Q appears and reminds Spock that he is prohibited from interfering in Earth's history. Besides, Q doesn't see mankind as something worth saving. This initial encounter between the two legendary characters explodes into a battle of wits as Spock cleverly befuddles Q with his own words. As barbs are exchanged and humanity's flaws and wonders are laid bare, Spock's logic convinces Q that the humans are indeed a species worthy of salvation and the asteroid is stopped.
Too hot for TV.
Have either of you heard this before?
Yes, I heard it when it first came out.
Oh, wow.
Oh, right.
But I heard it again recently and had, apart from the presentation, had remembered nothing about it from then. Because I remember being incredibly interesting in that it was the first time, you know, you'd get Star Trek magazine and you'd immediately head to the back of the magazine and it would tell you all the cool, like the product reviews and show you the artwork of new videos and stuff. And it was one of the few things that wasn't either a VHS or a DVD, or like a book, a Pocket Books release. It was audio. It was Leonard Nimoy and John Delancey, which I think if you're a Star Trek fan, you have always wanted to, what is that? What is Spock versus Q actually like? And I remember, I think Sean had it, and I think he lent it to me, and I listened to it. I don't think I appreciated it then, because... like, obviously, it's supposed to be Spock versus Q, but it's not really. It's just like it's a duologue treatise on what's good and what's bad about humanity.
Yeah.
Performed by Leonard Nimoy and John Delancey rather than Q or Spock. But I appreciate it now a lot more now listening to it again. I got it. I know you sent us a download link, but I got mine off Audible because I wanted my own copy of it. And it's immensely fun. Like, it is very funny. All the more remarkable in that it's not just in a studio. It's two beloved Star Trek actors performing their old-timey radio play at, I think, a convention in Kansas City. It was an actual Star Trek convention. You know, Doctor Who has these conventions where it's just terrible old cabaret guff in the evening because they know they're not going to tear you away.
Gary Downey's, dance routines and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
just a place
you
for...
say that, but I think I'd like to see Gary Downey's dance routine again. I'm not sure I want to listen to this again. Not because it was bad, just because it's more of a curious...
It's interesting, though, because that, again, kind of ties into this idea that Star Trek fans are a lot more serious than Doctor Who fans, because... yeah, Doctor Who conventions have these kind of ropey old cabarets where, old British actors just do their...
It's
do
never
their thing,
getting a commercial release. It's just...
Yeah, especially not now, sort of thing. Whereas Star Trek conventions have two actors come out on stage and perform, as you say, this treatise on kind of, what makes humanity good, what could we change, but performed as these beloved Star Trek characters. I can't imagine, like, what Colin Baker... well, I mean, I can't now because Michael Jason's dead, but, Colin Baker and Michael Jason coming out on stage, for example, and doing something like this. I don't think it would happen. It would be a big finished box set, recorded remotely, and it would kind of lose something, I think.
It'd be Colin's column in the Box Free Press, wouldn't it? And just Michael Jason being transphobic and racist, probably. So they've given this to some... R.I.P. Michael, sorry. They've given this to some professional actors who probably... I don't know for certain, but I imagine you can't find much about their political leanings online. I don't know. Maybe I'm spinning a lie there. But I feel like as Doctor Who actors from the classic series have aged, we've suddenly seen sides to them we never thought we'd necessarily see.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think also Star Trek, although there are exceptions, like the guy that played the Borg kid in Voyager.
Oh, Manu Inuyama or something? He played Icheb in Star Trek Voyager.
Yes, that's it. He got in a bit of bother, didn't he?
Yes, that is why they suspect that the character of Icheb is so brutally murdered in Series 1 of Star Trek Picard. It's not the same actor, but the guy who played Icheb... So Icheb, you're probably not familiar, Dylan, but in about kind of like Series 5, Series 6 of Voyager, they pick up a bunch of. They've already got 7 of 9, and they pick up a bunch of Borg kids, so that 7 has this storyline of having maternal instinct and raising children and all that kind of stuff. And one of them, Icheb, is maybe he's the teen, and they have this very special bond. Anyway, the actor is very. He's not necessarily. He wasn't necessarily vocal at the time, but he was a detractor when Anthony Rapp, who plays Stamets in Star Trek Discovery, was one of the guys that brought the legal challenges against Kevin Spacey, saying that when Rapp was, a young actor in Hollywood, 13, 14, he was at a Hollywood party, and Kevin Spacey climbed on top of him and had a bit of a touch him up. I think...
A bit of a touch him up.
I didn't know how to describe it, and I know people listening are going to be like, this fucking guy, cancel him. Anyway, I'm trying to be tactful, and it's coming across as very uncaring, and I don't mean it uncaring. However,
although speaking of people that should have isn't Joh Barrowman like school friends or like acting school friends with Anthony Rapp?
Maybe.
I feel like that came out, and then he ended up in court. I can't remember now. Barrowman got involved in the Anthony Rapp Spacey thing, but I can't remember exactly how.
He just wanted the publicity.
Yeah, probably.
He'll show up to anything.
And to be honest, the guy, I can't remember his name, I'm not going to keep trying to, but the guy who played Icheb, I think he was a bit of a kind of, why doesn't Icheb come back to Star Trek? Let's get an Icheb series going, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, he's criticised Anthony Rapp, said something like, you knew what was happening when you were around these people and all that. A lot of victim blaming. Yeah. Anyway, cut to the very next year, the character Icheb does reappear in Star Trek Picard, and he is brutally murdered, which allows 7 of 9 to go off on this kind of this revenge storyline, this anger and revenge story. Because when they show the murder, like he gets his fucking eye gouged out, and it's like brutally choked.
I did see all of Picard, so I must have. I just wouldn't have known what was going on outside of the show, I guess.
Yeah, and there's the kind of, the word on the street is that was a kind of solidarity, revenge by the current Star Trek production team.
Wow.
to side with Anthony Rapp.
And aside from people like him, I think it's a lot more managed.
Yeah, that's
Star
what
Trek.
It feels like.
I feel like it's... I mean, Shatner's going to Shatner. Like, they can't kind of keep a lid on him, and he's kind of, But even then, as people have pointed out, Shatner doesn't run his social media. Like, I think a lot of the stuff that people on Star Trek fans on social media sort of blame Shatner for don't realise that actually it is not him.
Yeah.
Shatner does not.
Actually running the account.
So when you look at what are called the Shatnerverse novels, The Return, The Ashes of Eden, I think there's like a trilogy of them, of like the reanimation of Captain Kirk's corpse after Star Trek Generations. They're all co-written with Judith and Garfield Reeves Stevens, and they are the ones. Like, if you like, The Return has some funky Star Trek ideas. None of those ideas have come from William Shatner. Like the crew, so it's not just Kirk versus the Next Generation crew. Like, it's got DS9 guest stars, like Dr. Bashir is in The Return.
Shatner doesn't know who Dr. Bashir is.
Shatner has no idea about who even the actor Alexander Siddig is. Like, there is no way that Shatner went, I've had an idea. You know the Bashir character. I think he needs to play that is entirely all the folklore and the mythology that have been put around it by 2 actual Star Trek writers. Because from from those writing gigs, they actually went on to work on Series 4 of Star Trek Enterprise.
Yeah, but without Shatner, right?
Without well, if they really had him,
try and come back.
Yeah, they very
anyway, we're sorry, we're kind of going.
He's always trying to come back, though, isn't he? That's my understanding. It's always like, I don't understand why my character can't come back, and everyone's just like, no.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to see a 90-year-old Captain Kirk.
No.
If we're all honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
No. There is something. Yeah. You just don't want to see it. There's that Captain's Roundtable, isn't there, that was on like one of the DVDs, and it was blatantly obvious even then, which is probably 20 years ago, that William Shatner had not seen Star Trek since he left it, and not much of it when he was in it either. But anyway, we digress. Spock versus Q.
Yeah.
So, Cecilia Fannin, I couldn't find much about her. She's written 2 Spot VQ audios, some TV thing called Where on Earth is Carmen Sandiego, and is now...
Oh, I remember that.
Oh, do you?
When I was a kid.
Yeah, well, she wrote some of that, and she now does memoir writing coaching. So, she's a jobbing writer, but like not a huge amounts of credits, especially not in sort of the spin-off world or TV. So, what do we think of this two-hander script that she delivers?
It was that sort of thing of like listening to it. So this was the first time I heard it, and it did feel that there's a lot of Nimoy and Delancey putting in their own stuff.
Yeah.
So like it's kind of hard. I think it's a good concept, and I think in terms of the structure of it, and in terms of how she sees what a kind of Spock and Q interaction would be, I think she nails it. But it's hard to tell in terms of the dialogue and kind of the back and forth how much of that is her writing and how much of that is these two guys kind of mugging for the audience, because they're doing it in front of a live studio audience in a kind of old-timey radio play thing, and probably amping up certain aspects. But I did really enjoy it, and I think like I say, it's fun. It's fun time movie Spock. It's not Star Trek the original series stern serious Spock, and I think that really livens it up a bit, because it's kind of Spock after he's kind of made peace with the fact that he's half Vulcan, half human, and he can be stern and serious, but he can also throw some Earth idioms and be a bit sarcastic and have a laugh. It's great. Like, I love how he massages Q's ego. To kind of get him to come back. It's great.
It also does well for it's about 50 minutes long, and it keeps you entertained for that whole 50 minutes, whereas if it was a 50-minute episode of Star Trek, they'd probably only share screen time for about 15 minutes of the 50 minutes.
Yeah.
So, Ben, what about you? How successful of a script, of a story is this?
How successful? Okay, so firstly, it sounds great. Like, the delight that the people who were in that auditorium watching that happen, you can almost feel it coming out the speaker. Sometimes it goes as far as sycophancy. Like, there are some jokes which are funny, sure, but the laughs are ridiculous. And it's purely because it's fans in the presence of two bona fide Star Trek greats. Also, they are properly, like, this isn't just two people reading something. They've obviously rehearsed it beforehand. They obviously are invested in the success of it. They are giving it their all in a way that, going back to the Doctor Who comparison, like, Doctor Who actors sound like they can't even be bothered to read the fucking script before they record a big finish.
Yeah, Sylvester McCoy.
Yeah, let alone you can imagine that they would put on like a fucking proper night of the theatre at a Doctor Who convention if you did this as the entertainment. Taking those elements away, I think the script is very fun, but it's not really a Star Trek-y script. It could be any two sparring characters just having a word about the state of, and I don't know if there was maybe a rights issue, because there were a couple of kind of like nod, wink, wink Star Trek jokes, and obviously it's Spock and it's Q, but they don't really mention. There's not a lot of stuff about the wider Star Trek world or universe.
Well, the whole bit, like I say, when Spock's massaging Q's ego, I said, "Oh, they said you were fascinating and and intelligent," and he's like, "Oh, who said that?" Because obviously the whole thing with Q is that he starts off as like Picard's nemesis, but then actually kind of just becomes his love interest, as the show goes on.
Yeah.
Like, it's as much a kind of mutual admiration thing between Picard and Q. So it's like, that he's talking about Picard, but somehow Nimoy's
they're not allowed to say it.
Not allowed to say Jean-Luc Picard.
Feels like there were some rights issues with like even mentioning. I think they mentioned the Enterprise once, but it's in a joke.
Yeah, well, there's a bit where he says, was it Enterprising
Voyagers, when they were talking about like ancient
there's
Greek
a very
explorers.
kind of nudge, wink, wink when he says that, and the audience like, ha 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 ha, as if like, oh, we all know that you can't reference the Q episodes of Voyager that have probably aired at this point.
On the wiki article, it's very clear. It says this is non-canonical, and I think they're quite big on that on the Star Trek wiki in particular, like a lot more
They
than
are,
it is
really
on,
are on
yeah,
Star Trek Wiki.
Yeah. Compared
There's
to
a lot
the
of
Doctor
stuff.
Who one.
Yeah, I'll pitch articles about Star Trek spin-off stuff, and it's very much like, oh well, no, it's not canon.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, it's not canon until it is canon, until it isn't, right? Or like other vice versa. And I said, well, no, it's not canon until it's confirmed.
So I wonder whether they got the license to do this, but the license was you can use the 2 characters, but it's so non-canonical that we as Paramount don't recognise it as part of that universe, and you can't do anything remotely Star Trek-y or mention anything remotely Star Trek-y. Or maybe, I couldn't find any evidence of this, but I thought maybe it was done for charity or something like that. So
Well, I wondered if it's one of those things where they've recorded it as a convention, as a kind of entertainment, and then gone, oh, well, that was great fun, we should release this as a because what's the genesis of it? What did the
Simon and Schuster is an audio publishing company in America, and I thought actually it was a wing of Paramount, meaning that they could maybe use, because Simon and Schuster there were a lot of other audiobooks of Star Trek, like recordings of like novels and stuff, and they would always be the ones that would publish it. But the company itself, it's an Alien Voices production. Alien Voices was a company or a wing of Simon & Schuster that was set up by Delancey, Leonard Nimoy, and a third audio producer, whose name escapes me. And it was for the purpose of gathering specifically Star Trek actors together to do oldie-timey radio shows. And these ones, the Spock versus Q, were the first ones out, but they would go on to make adaptations of a lot of H.G. Wells, The First Men on the Moon, The War of the Worlds. I can't remember what else. A Time Machine. And they would get, like First Men on the Moon. They roped in William Shatner as the King of Mars and stuff like that. And so it had loads of other various kind of Star Trek actors, not just original series, but from all of them, to put together these old 1950s live kind of radio broadcasts. And it was an official kind of Simon Schuster wing of it, and these were very much like the first releases, I think, and it didn't last very long. John Delancey's been on record as saying, whilst we enjoyed doing it, we found that they weren't big sellers. They would be sellers within the Star Trek community, but there wasn't a wider audience for it. So you end up, rather than being the writer and the performer and the director of these little dream ambitions, you spend a lot of time just flogging audiobooks, and it becomes less enjoyable when there's like a target that you've got to hit with each of them.
I can imagine Delancey at an autograph table with a kind of bank of CDs. Or cassettes,
And presumably this was the launch. This was to keep people sweet. To give people not just an instance of being with those 2 actors, but to give them that kind of, extended universe Star Trek meeting that they were never going to have on TV or in movies.
Ben, you talked a little bit about the live element. Mark, what about you? How do you feel the live element works here?
I think that this wouldn't work without it.
Yeah. I
think there's a certain energy that it brings. Because it's like you were saying, Dylan, like on TV, or was it you, Ben? Like on TV, like it would only be like 50 minutes of screen time together, because you wouldn't dedicate a 45-minute Star Trek episode to Spock and Q just sitting, chatting. More's the pity, I would argue, but so you don't get that. But I think the live thing really helps. I think, there are moments where it veers into sycophancy, and that can be a bit annoying, but there is just, you can tell it's like it's 2 stage actors, like Nimoy and Delancey have done a lot of stage work, so they know how to respond to an audience, and they really respond to the kind of the audience, and kind of play up sort of aspects that maybe they wouldn't necessarily have done in the rehearsal, and it feels like a really kind of nice live organic experience, and it's quite infectious when you're listening to it.
Yeah, absolutely. you can picture the scene, the convention scene, can't you? And you kind of like, oh, I'd love to see something like this live. I bet there was a real atmosphere. You know, you've had your day of panels, you've been off for some dinner, had a few drinks, and then you go upstairs and watch that rather than John Levine singing "Come My or whatever he's singing that night.
Have you seen any of the
places I remember?
Have you seen the clips of it?
Yes, yeah.
So there are. So you can just look at them on YouTube. They did this one, and they did Spock versus Q, the sequel, and then they brought out like a kind of super version of those two, plus a third audio or a third disc where you could see highlights of the convention performances. Right. They're on YouTube now, so you can actually see what it would have been presented like, and it's not especially stellar. Like it's too.
They're face to face, aren't they?
Yeah,
they've
two little
kind of the
plinths.
scripts and the mics and
two plinths. Both of them dressed like Steve Jobs, dark on a dark stage.
They're
just reading as well. They're just reading the script. Yeah.
Do we think that the comedy element works of it?
I think with the character of Q, it does. There are certain bits where I'm listening to it going, is this going too far? You know the bit where Spock asks Q, what's it like being you? And he goes into a little kind of Broadway musical. It's swell. It's great. I was like, nah, like he would regularly, like, for a gag, show up on the bridge of the Enterprise with a mariachi band. And so, like...
Yeah, the mariachi band. And he clicks his fingers and Picard and Riker get little cigars.
So the comedy works for Q. And John Delancey sounds like... There's a great bit where Spock's challenging him to... some game in order to try and curry his favor, and he says something like chess, and then he goes blackjack, and he goes, I am shocked there's a suggestion of gambling in this place. It was a moment. It's like, I think he just fed off the atmosphere of the audience and decided to go full on camp Q with some of those jokes. You can hear them building.
My favourite joke in that bit, like, that's good, but the bit afterwards where Spock's like, I think it's Q suggests chess or something, and Spock's like, well, chess is a game that requires logic and sort of, was it like focus and determination? And Q's like, well, they play chess on Earth. If that were true, then nobody would be playing chess.
If that were true, they wouldn't be playing it on this planet.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, where the comedy seems weirdly misplaced is with Spock. I know that what the character that we're supposed to have is your kind of your late period ambassador Spock. So your next generation, he's helping to reunify Vulcan and Romulus. And the conceit is that they are actually presenting this to an audience. It starts off as Spock trying to convince the assembled human mass in front of him that to see the error of their ways, and so it becomes a very public sparring match. But he starts with like a kind of like 1980s stand-up club set where he's talking about, I think he said, like, if I'm reading your newspapers correctly, then this age seems to be obsessed with sex and political scandal and more sex. And it's like, I cannot believe that we're less than 3 minutes into this and Spock has said sex twice.
Yeah.
And there's 2 Seinfeld references in this as well.
Yes.
Yeah. There's
but
a bit
Seinfeld
where
not just ended at this point as well?
I think so. So there's a bit where Seinfeld himself is named by Q. But there's a bit where Q is talking and Spock says, to borrow a popular phrase of this age, yada, yada, yada. Which is a phrase popularised by Seinfeld at the time.
So I guess on that, are these recognisably their TV counterparts, or is it very much amped up because they're bouncing off the audience?
It's tricky, isn't it? Because I think, as Ben says, I think Q definitely. It's kind of maybe a slightly more amped up live version, but in terms of the TV Q, he's there. It's definitely Q at this point as well in sort of, because it was this 99.
Yeah.
November 99.
So this is the Q that has a comedy son that shows up on Voyager. Like, this isn't the putting humanity on trial.
Yeah, it would be this year, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. This is not the putting humanity on trial Q. This is the comedy pain in the ass for Captain Janeway Q.
Yeah. So it's definitely that. And Spock, I think, like I say, it's definitely the kind of voyage home, onwards Spock. But obviously, in the last time you've seen him in Next Generation, he's a lot more sort of serious and pretentious, and he's got to unify sort of Vulcan and Romulus, and he's in hiding and all of that stuff. Whereas here, he's just making jokes about sex and scandal and politics and kind of riffing with Q. But reunifying Vulcan and Romulus is a tough job. It doesn't happen in the Star Trek universe for 900 years after Spock tries it. So give the guy a day off, I would say, and he's just having a laugh.
Yeah, to
Just
pop back in time and avert another disaster. Which at the end, I mean, spoilers, but I mean that was the whole. It turns out it was a whole tricking conceit to get Q involved in the first place.
Yeah.
It's not just a kind of fun thing where Q has shown up. This was Spock's plan all along.
All along, yeah. Here's the thing about Q. You know the bit where they talk about the Guardian of Forever?
Yeah.
And it's like, that lopsided donut.
Yeah.
And Spock's like, you mean the Guardian of Forever? Have you ever encountered the Guardian of Forever? And Q's like, been there, done that. Got the T-shirt. Is Q saying that he's stuck his willy in the Guardian of Forever?
I don't know what that was supposed to be.
Or is he just saying that he's sent people back in time to, learn or do things?
I think it was supposed to be that. Yeah, I think it was supposed to be that. He had, he's obviously the guy that sent Picard and Co back to Robin Hood times and stuff. So he doesn't need a donut in a deserted, sandy planet. Yeah,
it's just the way he delivers it. The way he delivers the line, done that. It's like, hang on, what?
You mean shagging the Guardian, is it? No wonder the Guardian has to up sticks and move to another planet across the universe in Discovery. if it's being fucked by the Continuum.
Something we'll come back to with the next one as well, but we talked a little bit about you can't imagine this being done in Doctor Who. So at the time, Doctor Who wise, Big Finish have just got their license to do Doctor Who. So the month in November 1999, The Whispers of Terror by Justin Richards was out. It was The Whispers of Terror, which is the first Colin one. We've had Phantasmagoria, and we've had the Sirens of Time, and then the Bernice things. So I'm just wondering, and I'm aware you may not even remember these stories, but sort of contrasting and comparing where the two fandoms are at with audio production at the time.
It's good because it keeps the normal Too Hot for TV listeners listening.
Yeah, exactly.
At this stage, I think. And I think I've said this to you before, Dylan, on this, is that I think Doctor and Big Finish, especially Big Finish in sort of 99, it's very much, it's a TV format. They're doing a kind of radio drama, but within a kind of sort of TV 4-part format. Whereas I think this is in the style of old radio plays. It's a two-hander. It's two characters riffing off each other in a kind of comedy double act kind of routine. It's kind of going, all right, well, what does Star Trek on audio sound like? So it seems to be kind of paying a bit more attention to the medium at this point, which I think Big Finish wouldn't necessarily do for another year or two.
Yeah,
arguably.
No, I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. When you listen to something like this, if you weren't a Star Trek fan, you'd think you were listening to a Play for Today on Radio 4. It's got that kind of two-hander, that philosophical, that almost Beckettian kind of philosophical question argued by two characters with humor, with drama, with pathos. You could just be listening to it on Radio 4, and it feels like it. I understand why Big Finish is something that has come from a British property. The role of radio, the role of audio drama is much more pronounced, much more entrenched culturally in the UK. It's not in America. This was very much a very strange little. That's probably why it wasn't as successful. Simon & Schuster very much was your audiobooks. They weren't about making spin-off audio productions or trying to bring back that kind of the golden age of radio, which was largely dead as America. Like, America doesn't have the equivalent of Radio 4 or Radio 4 Extra. So it is strange. They've made they look like they're doing it at the same time, Big Finish and Alien Voices. One is undeniably more successful because it culturally is able to be.
Yeah.
Whereas this is such a strange little dead end for Star Trek Extended Universe, because it's not even like, that was the glorious first failure, but actually we never have that sort of thing again. Like, we don't have Star Trek on audio.
No.
Like, it's just not although, apparently we've got a Khan podcast series coming out from Nicholas Meyer.
It's been in the offing for ages, isn't it?
Yeah. But that really will, when that comes out, that will be the first time it's been attempted since Alien Voices, which wasn't even an official production,
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that's true, because Big Finish not got some Star Trek. Not necessarily, not with original cast. I swear there's three,
They had a little range at some point, but it was audiobooks, from what I understand.
Oh, but the audiobooks, right? Yeah, audio drama,
And I don't think it lasted very long. It's one of those things. Yeah.
What, like episodes, or what was it like?
And they were like new stories or something, and it was a completely new ship, and it was no. I don't think it had any kind of original sort of cast members from any of the series or anything.
Right. Okay.
But it's like the Tomorrow People range or Sapphire and Steel. It's just not available anywhere anymore because the rights disappeared pretty quickly after they got them, I think.
It wasn't the New Frontier books, was it? They tried to do.
Oh,
I don't think so.
Which they did try and launch. Peter David, they did try and launch like a new spin-off Star Trek series purely as novels. Captain Mackenzie Calhoun and the crew of the Starship Excalibur, and I think
it was that.
It was New Frontier.
I think it was called Star Trek Excalibur.
Right.
Big Finish. Yeah.
The books of which were being released about this time. They were on our release list. So it was audiobooks of them, but it never went far. And I just think the nature of Star Trek as well, because it's an ensemble cast and their American cast, you just can't see Big Finish being able to find a business model, I think, that works, of trying to get the whole of the Next Generation cast onto audio at some point. It'd be that box set would cost you £100,000 per CD.
Yeah, like if you were gonna do it, it's probably gonna be along the Torchwood model.
Yeah,
and that it's based around like one key crew member, and then they have like a solo adventure. Like they've obviously Chase Masterson is in the Eric Roberts Masters box set. I think they had Marina Sirtis was in a box set as well.
She's done a Doctor Who one, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Like
Alexander Siddig's done a few Doctor Who Big Finish.
So they could do like a Dr. Bashir on the holodeck.
Yeah.
Box set of adventures.
I can't believe George Takei's not showing up in a Big Finish at some point. It seems like exactly the sort of thing that he'd be up for.
Yeah, I would have thought. Like, if there's one group of people who are going to make a Captain Sulu series, a reality for him, which he's been championing since Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country in 1991, it's going to be Big Finish.
Very true. Is there anything else we want to say about Spock versus Q before we move on to our second release?
We've kind of hit the nail on the head by failing to hit the nail on the head. It's an hour. There's a lot to be taken from it, but it is gossamer thin. Like, it is very ephemeral. I can understand why people went mental for it at a convention. It's great.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know if it earns a place of being an essential bit of kit.
No.
In terms of home release.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree. So, is this a clanger, a banger, or an average meander?
It's definitely not a clanger. I feel average meander feels a bit harsh. I'm going to go with like a quiet banger. Okay. Just a kind of like, what was that? That sounded exciting.
Yeah. I think you need to be in the mood for it. I think you I think you have to have a very specific nostalgic itch that you need to scratch, and this will do it brilliantly. I don't think you just kind of like stick it on as you're doing the housework, because you'll just phase it out. Like it's, and there is a second one as well. There's which I haven't listened to, so, but I understand, spoilers, is that Spock and Q are having a meal and they swap personalities. So it's Leonard Nimoy as Q and John Delancey as Spock.
Interesting.
Just to shake things up a bit. But it's more of the same philosophy shit.
Fair. I will go quiet banger too, and I think you're right. It just about pushes the nostalgia buttons for me, because my favourite era of Star Trek is the movies, so we've definitely got later film Spock here, and I watched a lot of Next Gen as a kid. I had the Q VHS box set that had a bunch of his episodes in like in a cardboard thing. He was a favourite character of mine, so just hearing these guys share a stage for an hour was good enough for me. Ben, did you say whether it was a clanger banger or average meander? You have to.
Sorry, quiet banger. I think I said
banger.
I agree with Mark, but I didn't say it in so many words. It's definitely a quiet banger.
Well, we're all quietly banging. Make of that what you will.
Quietly banging the Guardian of Forever is
The
what
episode
that track
title.
was.
Too hot for TV.
The next thing we're covering is Star Trek of Gods and Men, which was released in June of 2008. It was written by Sky Conway, Jack Trevino, and Ethan H. Calk. Ethan H. Calk? Calk's not a real surname, is it? No.
I think you're being kind to the guy. It's CALK. It's cock. It's Ethan Cock.
Ethan Calk, and directed by Tim Russ. What was going on in the world of Star Trek at the time? Well, obviously there was more deaths. So Bill Dial had died from Voyager and Deep Space Nine. Michael Rugus, who was Cleary in the motion picture, had died. And Lillian Chauvin dies. All these names are too much for me. Anyway, bunch of people in Star Trek died. What you need is solid names like John Levine and Richard Franklin. I know how to pronounce them.
Good solid British
British
names. None of this
yeah.
American nonsense.
Yeah, we're doing bigotry and xenophobia on this podcast now. So, what else was going on? Well, the Star Trek, the original series, was being remastered and aired all over the world. There wasn't any new Star Trek on the air, but we had the pocket Deep Space Nine novel Fearful Symmetry by Olivia Woods, and another pocket DS9 book called These Haunted Seas. There we go. So, a couple of Deep Space Nine books, Star Trek the original series remastered and getting broadcast everywhere, and a bunch of dead people. That is the world of Star Trek in 2008.
But the film was coming out the next year, wasn't it?
And it's amazing how many plot elements that it shares.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Too hot for TV.
Uhura and Chekhov attend the launch of a new enterprise where they meet Captain Harriman. They receive a distress call from the planet M622, home of the Guardian of Forever. They head to the planet to find Charlie Evans, who is after revenge on Kirk. Evans uses the Guardian to alter the timeline and erase Kirk from history by killing his mother. Evans succeeds, and the timelines are altered beyond measure. The galaxy is governed by the Galactic Order, a militaristic state similar to the Terran Empire, but also including Klingons, Romulans, and Orions in their ranks. Harriman is a brutal mass murderer in this timeline, commanding the GSS Conqueror. The Conqueror pursues a rebel vessel and disables it, capturing the crew, which is revealed to be Chekhov under the name Kittrick. Harriman orders them taken to the brig and sets a course for Vulcan, which has declared itself neutral in the conflict. On Vulcan, Uhura is married to Ston and has several children. Upon learning of the Conqueror's arrival, the Vulcans begin to evacuate the planet. Harriman summons Kittrick to the bridge to witness Vulcan's destruction for not supporting the Order. While many of the fleeing Vulcan shuttles manage to escape, Uhura and her friend Tuvok are captured by the Conqueror and put in the brig with Kittrick. Through a mind meld with a mortally wounded Tuvok, Uhura recovers part of her memories of the old timeline and convinces Kittrick, who she knows by his original name, to help them escape and hijack the ship. They head back to M622 to use the Guardian and restore the timeline.
Too hot for TV.
So, Mark, you suggested this film.
I did.
Had you seen it before?
No, I hadn't. But Gary Graham had passed away quite recently, and I was essentially writing his kind of obituary sort of article for Screen Rant. And one of the notes was, "Oh, could you just, put in a mention for his fan films?" So, writing it, did a bit of research into his fan films. I was like, wait, what? There was a Star Trek fan film that was until recently available on YouTube called Star Trek of Gods and Men, and it had Gary Graham in it alongside Walter Koenig, Nichelle Nichols, Alan Ruck. I mean, for a sec, can we just take for a moment here to just... Alan Ruck has been in one of the greatest sort of coming-of-age movies of all time, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Mm-hmm. And he's been in one of HBO's biggest drama series, of the past decade, Succession.
Yeah.
And he's also in this Star Trek fan film. That's a hell of a career.
It is.
Again, you're not getting Doctor Who actors that have done all three of those things.
Yeah. Jenna Coleman isn't popping back to do a Bill Baggs story anytime soon, is she?
Not unless things go very badly for her.
Ben, were you aware of this at all?
Well, I was aware of it. I hadn't watched it, although I do like a good Star Trek fan-made spin-off. And it's amazing that how they've come on. The other night when I was watching it, and then I was texting you, talking about Trekkies, the fan film made by Denise Crosby. Trekkies 2 is pretty good because it looks at the production of like the burgeoning fan film creation. And the DVD of Trekkies 2 is great because it has as the extras the whole of these fan films, and it's very much in its infancy. Then it's like a bunch of I can't remember, I haven't seen it in ages, but it's a bunch of guys who've all got different types of Star Trek uniforms because it's just they're bringing shit from their own home, and all these films are set in like one of those Wild West original series worlds because they don't have a budget to build a starship, so they just pick it's one of those original series historical episodes that they go back and because one guy owns the camera and one guy owns the van that gets them to the location. For some reason, this starship has got co-captains, and they're all the fattest guys you've ever seen in your lives, right? It's all that kind of stuff. But then you get this period of just phenomenally good Star Trek spin-off movies. There's, it's kind of related. It's not part of this original series, but the sets that this is filmed on is part of Star Trek New Voyages. There's also Star Trek Continues, and both of them are an attempt, high budget fan productions, to give you year 4 and year 5 of the original 5-year mission of the Enterprise. And it gets good guest stars. I mean, okay, I'm saying good guest stars, guest stars at least that we would be familiar with. New Voyages has an episode where Colin Baker, Doctor Who Colin Baker, is in. Star Trek Continues. They close out their 2-part final mission of the Starship Enterprise. Nicola Bryant is the guest. New Voyages has Walter Koenig appear in it. Continues as George Takei. They pay for all these guys, and they get these. It becomes when it blurs fan film with, or is it officially Paramount sanctioned? It starts getting in the door of legitimate television Star Trek, which leads to a whole bunch of legal problems, specifically for the team that create this movie, a little further down the road. And I hadn't specifically seen this one before, but it was always on the list. It was always on the, it's tough enough getting television time to myself to watch actual real things that I want to watch, let alone the fan movie spin-offs that go along with it. You know how many times I've had to get up at fucking 6 a.m. if I want to watch a Mythmakers real
The struggle is real.
Because it just will not be tolerated on television in this household.
That's fair. It's interesting what you said. I've seen a surprising number of Star Trek fan films, at least I think for me. If we're excluding BBV and Real Time from the Doctor Who fan film pantheon, because they were available in shops and stuff, so regardless of what you think the quality is, they're sort of commercial, professional releases, but that's a conversation for another time. But Doctor Who fan films, it's always a bunch of chubby guys in a forest running around. They've got one girl who looks like me, and she's the companion, and everybody wants to be the Doctor, so there are always multi-Doctor stories.
Yeah.
And the TARDIS is a Dapol model in the foreground, and then they walk out of like 10 meters away, and it just I think. I haven't seen like the Dominic G. Martin ones, for instance. I've seen trailers for those, and it looks like they've put some real effort, money, and time into making those. But certainly the Doctor Who fan films that I have seen from the past are shockingly bad. But I've seen quite a few Star Trek ones, that Colin Baker one in particular. And then here we are with this. It cost $150,000.
Mad, isn't it?
They paid all the cast basically SAG minimum, even though a lot of the crew were volunteers. And they've spent some serious money.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what do we think of the production values? Because it's not quite 2008 broadcastable, I would say. But it's got a feeling of... I would say it's got a feeling of a mid-90s sci-fi channel film or something like that, I think is probably where I would lay the production values at. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think there's little sort of niggly things, like the uniforms are very obviously, sort of either kind of just handmade or kind of just costume shop, kind of like off the rack kind of thing. I mean, they have built a fairly serviceable Enterprise bridge.
Yes.
And corridors and sickbay and transporter rooms.
And it's
yeah.
pretty impressive. I mean, because, talking about Doctor Who fan films, I mean, they don't spend $150,000, but, you look at Devious, and I know I'm a bit biased because I've spent a lot of time with the guys, but they properly built a TARDIS, they properly built Daleks, they properly put the work into building that, but the only reason they did that is because they'd managed to wrangle John Pertwee into the mix, and they didn't want him to be embarrassed and show up and just sort of do fucking depth of field tricks with a sort of little Dapol TARDIS console, And I guess it's the same here in a way. It's that if you're gonna get these legends of Star Trek to kind of be in your fan film, although I say fan film, Jack Trevino, who co-wrote the script, wrote. Well, actually, did he write? I don't know if he's actually ever written any Star Trek, but he certainly submitted story outlines.
So he wrote 2 DS9 episodes, one of which is one of my favourite Star Treks. He wrote Indiscretion for Series 4 of DS9, which is the episode where Gul Dukat reveals that he has a daughter called Zial, who plays a ongoing role in the series. But he also, one of my favourite episodes, he wrote Little Green Men, where Quark, Rom and Nog are in a time travel accident, and they are the Roswell aliens. They go back and...
Although, is that not a story? It's a story outlined by him and his wife, I think. And then Ira Stephen Burr wrote the teleplay, I think. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure.
Check
Either way,
but he was involved in that. It was his pitch, if nothing else. The best thing about that, do you know that started out as a I'm going off on a nerd tangent here, but that started out as a TNG. So he pitched that to TNG. Yeah.
And basically the idea would be that the Ferengi were dead, and the next gen crew had to land in Roswell in New Mexico and kind of try and get rid of this Ferengi technology before the US military got involved. And could you I could not imagine the next gen crew involved in this kind of like hijinks comedy involving dead Ferengi corpses. Like, it's insane. So the version we get in DS9 is way better.
Yeah. So theirs was the story for Indiscretion and for Little Green Men, and it was the actual screenplay or the teleplay was created by staff DS9ers.
Yeah, but I mean they're both fantastic episodes. But yeah, so you've got him on the sort of script duties, and you've got an incredible cast, because it's not just the kind of main three of kind of Joh Barrowman, Uhura, Chekhov. You've got Tuvok, because
Yeah.
obviously Tim Russ is directing it,
Wild.
which is kind of, it's not a fan. They've actually got Tim Russ, who has directed episodes of Star Trek Voyager. They get him in to direct the film. They presumably pay him
Yeah.
Is he getting SAG minimum and Directors Guild minimum? I don't know.
Lucky
but
him, he's making money.
he's doing all right. So they get him in.
Chase
Like,
Masterson's
they get
in it.
Chase Masterson's in it. Well, I mean, part of me is like, oh, of course she is. Garrett Wang is in it.
Garrett Wong.
As kind of. Oh, sorry, Garrett Wong. It's because he's a bit of a wanger. But he's in it. Ethan Phillips gets this great cameo at the start.
Yeah.
And I think because that's the kind of opening sequences. Ethan Phillips is this kind of like schlubby sort of data clerk, sort of staffing this kind of like outpost, like out in the arse end of nowhere, and it's shot like it's Battlestar Galactica.
It is.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like the way it's got that kind of sort of documentary style. Sort of like the cameras are in really close and they're up above him, and it's kind of quite grim and gritty, and I'm like, this feels like we're a long way from kind of BBV and sort of things like that.
So far away.
Yeah.
It's interesting when you start and you say it's sort of shot like Battlestar Galactica, and then we go down to a planet and it's a quarry or whatever, but it was a quarry in the original series. I think the thing that lets it down visually for me is the Enterprise, which looks great, but it's all shot so flat. It's like it doesn't have the benefit of like the Strange New Worlds lighting and things like that. It's like that set is a 60s style set, and it's just the lighting on the whole thing is so flat, which is a shame because most of the episode is set on this ship.
Yeah.
But once I got used to it, it didn't distract for me at all from the fact that this is a fucking good bit of Star Trek, I think.
It is good. I mean, the only other thing before we get into why it's good, the only other thing that bothered me, and I think it's kind of directorial choice, there's a lot of reaction shots, to the point where you're like, can we just like, I get that they've reacted to the thing that's happened. Can we maybe kind of like move this up a bit? And there's also a lot of kind of, as you say on the Enterprise bridge, a lot of wide shots. Like there's a big action sequence towards the end, which I won't spoil, but there's a character who gets killed off, and you see Walter Koenig as Chekhov just sat there watching it happen.
Yeah.
Which makes him look like a bit of a prick. Whereas if you just closed the shot off a bit more, you could have had this kind of dramatic sort of final confrontation sacrifice thing. But all you've got is just Walter Koenig in the corner of the shot, kind of just watching it all take place. It's odd.
The other thing that took me out of it was Walter Koenig's wig for when he's in.
That's a hell of a syrup. That's a hell of a syrup. And also, I guess it's to denote that we're in a darker timeline.
Yeah.
We are.
But you could have just maybe put a couple of black streaks in the grey wig that he's wearing, because at this point, Koenig's bald.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a wig on a wig.
But the grey wig's a little bit more convincing. You could have just maybe put some darker streaks in that, rather than giving him this mad emo wig that they kind of give him that takes up almost his whole face.
Very true. But I feel like we're slagging it off a bit too much here because, as I said, I think this is a good film. What say you, Ben?
I loved it. Loved it. What did I love? Okay. Yes, you're right. In terms of slagging it off, some of the visuals are shit. But it is more than made up for by the performances. The attention to detail, the plot, the conviction. It really takes you along. It sweeps you up. This is very fun. This is good. And it's also obviously written by people who enjoy Star Trek. It's very kind of, continuity heavy. But it's continuity in a way that gives closure to things that didn't have closure when you first encountered them in the Star Trek universe. Okay, who starts off as the baddie? Charlie from Charlie X. who turns out to be the goodie at the end, who has an arc of understanding and betterment and self-analysis that they never had when at the end of the original series episode Charlie X is Charlie. There's genuinely some touching and great work done by Nichelle Nichols and Walter Koenig. Let's be honest, it's probably the most depth their characters get in all the Star Trek appearances they've ever made. They never get this depth in the original series, and they never get it in the movies. The whole impetus for this thing came about because Nichelle Nichols was apparently had confided into certain friends that she wasn't happy with Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country as an ending for the original series crew, that it wasn't the ensemble that it should have been. Everyone gets a character moment, but they don't really move the plot along in the same way that the integral scenes of, say, Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home allowed everyone to play a part in it. The guy who wrote it, or who kind of was the producer, a guy called Sky Conway, he worked for Star Trek licensing in Paramount. He was a friend of Gene Roddenberry and Majel Barrett, and eventually started to become a representative for some original series alumni. Nichelle Nichols, Walter Koenig. Before it was Captain Harriman of the Starship Enterprise B, it was supposed to be Sulu as the third. It was supposed to be those three characters. His idea was that we give those three overlooked characters their own Star Trek movie. As it was released originally as a 3-part web series. Like they obviously care deeply about giving these characters the kind of send off, and these actors really respond to that. Like, I think Nichelle Nichols is great in this. There's some amazing moments
she's
in
really
it.
good.
I'm only going to go back to that Doctor Who comparison again and again, but when I think of performances that certain Doctor Who actors may have made in, say, a BBV production, and it's like, you go, oh no, there's real heart and the emphasis is put in the right place, and these are actors who are bit part actors in the original series, giving it their all in everything they do and going, well, this is my sort of final stand from the character. I mean, Nichelle said, like, many times in interviews, the only reason she stayed in Star Trek was because she had that meeting with Martin Luther King, who basically said, well, we love watching you on TV, and she was like, yeah, but I'm not doing anything, and that's why she stayed. So to have a story like this for her, to have a story like this for Chekhov, I'm pulled into it as a fan of those original Star Trek movies, of a fan of the original series. I'm like, this is everything I need from a Star Trek to push my nostalgia buttons. Yeah.
I mean, it was... So, the team behind this made it because Star Trek is not on air. And after the franchise fatigue kind of curtails Enterprise, it's probably not going to be on air for quite a while. So, it's up for grabs to be the new producer, the new custodian, the new production team behind a new Star Trek. And so with this, and then the sequel kind of project they work on, Star Trek Renegades, the intention is that it's made, rather than just pitched in a script format to Paramount, why not make it? Why not crowdfund and make it and present it? And maybe the way forward for Star Trek is to engage with the new media. It becomes a web series. It just needs the backing and the money of...
Sounds a bit Ian Levine, though, doesn't it? At first.
Yeah. But at least what you have with all of these people is track record. And not in terms of not just getting hold of, like, Trek actors. It's also the Trek actors that you don't immediately realise are Trek actors, that it's purely for fans. So the Stawn character that Uhura is married to is the actual actor and character of Stawn from the original series Mirror Mirror. Like, it's Lawrence Montaigne.
The best thing about that is, so obviously that's the guy that steals Spock's, fiance in Amok Time. But in the wedding, in that final scene, the Vulcan chaplain is the same actress that plays T'Pring.
Yes, Arlene Martel, who was T'Pring.
Yes.
So and it's weird. It's like, is she the same character, or is she just
yeah.
in?
Or is it just a knowing nod?
Yeah.
And a wink that, well, T'Pring's dead, so
they divorced and
widower is now marrying Uhura,
and they have Grace Lee Whitney back, who was Janice Rand. They've got J.G. Hertzler, who was Chancellor Martok in Deep Space Nine, and also Uhura's alternate universe son is her grandson is Sirach Lofton, who was Jake Sisko in Deep Space Nine. So you spend a lot of time, and there's loads of people who are at the wedding party as well, who are like your one episode original series Yeowoman or Yeoman. And you go, oh, there's it's obviously done in such a way to curry favour not just with the people who represent Star Trek, the actors at that point, but also the people who are fans going, oh, fuck, look, there's I get that reference. I want 28 episodes of this a year, please.
Even as a filthy casual myself, there were so many faces that I was like, is that...
So the only two not originals are actually the two most pivotal characters. It's not the original Charlie from Charlie X, and it's not the original Gary Mitchell from Where No One Has Gone Before, or Where No Man Has Gone Before, sorry. So
it kind of doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It slightly loses something. It's not those actors, but it's... you're right. It doesn't matter. I'm just quibbling. It doesn't fucking matter at all.
I think the idea of Gary Mitchell facing off against Charlie X, because... both, like Where No Man Has Gone Before and Charlie X, are both very similar stories. It's about...
It's your Star Trek god, your person elevated to godhood.
Yeah. And Kirk having to kind of go, well, this is wrong, like what if I, let this take place, then they're going to just kind of take over and sort of subjugate humanity. Until Gary Mitchell turned up, I thought it was quite interesting that obviously the whole point of The Undiscovered Country is that it's Kirk confronting the fact that he hates the Klingons because they killed his son, and all the stuff that happened in the original series, all the post-war trauma, all that kind of thing. So if Kirk's dead, then humans and Klingons just team up to just subjugate everybody else because Kirk's not there to object. But actually it's more than that. But there's such a care and attention given to it. I think there's so much stuff in Star Trek where they're always trying to remake Wrath of Khan. Always. It's Star Trek Nemesis is a remake of Wrath of Khan. Star Trek Into Darkness is the most obvious sort of remake of Wrath of Khan. But this has elements of Wrath of Khan. It's an enemy of Kirk's wanting their vengeance. But Kirk's dead. They're not going to get it. They're not going to get that satisfaction of getting the revenge. So what do they do? Well, they go back in time and they kill Kirk, and then they realise that actually that's just made things worse. And they have to live with the consequences of that. That's such a smart idea.
Yeah.
And you get that really tender moment at the end with Uhura and Charlie that calls back to Charlie X, and it's so beautifully done. And it's like, this is a fan film, but it's got it's so attuned to the kind of emotion of those characters in a show that in the 60s was a kind of episodic. At the end of every week there'd be a reset button, there's no kind of consequences that would overarch. There's a really nice emotional nuance to the characters, and I feel like the people writing this have a sense of those characters and who those characters would be if things had changed. And also, actually, the thing I really like, there's a whole thing in Star Trek fandom and in writing about Star Trek where it's all like, oh, Joh Barrowman's the worst Enterprise captain because he got Captain Kirk killed. And this just unequivocally says at the start, it's like, look, Kirk made his choice. He didn't have to go down to that deflector array. He didn't have to do what he did, but he did it because he was a hero. And at the end of the day, mate, you did the best you could in the impossible circumstances. Fair play.
Yeah. And then out of that, a friendship between Harriman and Chekhov. Like, that's like, there are many great elements of Star Trek storytelling that make up this thing. But it does it with such a deftness, a lightness of touch that doesn't feel like it's just a continuity slam in the face. Like all the continuity elements that are picked up emotionally pay off in a very satisfying way. And this might be a good time to talk about that the very next year, so many of those elements are then used to reboot Star Trek by J.J. Abrams.
Yeah.
I mean, we have
isn't
in Of Gods and Men a story involving time travel that creates an alternate universe, which is about of changing the nature of Captain Kirk's birth and involving the destruction of the planet Vulcan. Now, two very different tales, but like,
Yeah.
I had to check the dates. I was like,
yeah.
who did this
Because
first?
this was originally 2006. Because it was, I was reading it. It was originally planned as a 40th anniversary present, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But it didn't kind of get released as a web series until, what was it, 2007?
Yeah.
And then kind of came out as a full feature in 2008. Is that right?
Yeah.
That sounds about right, yeah.
So it's been kicking around for a fair few years in some form before Star Trek 2009 comes out.
But it's basically the same take. I mean, it's not the same take, obviously. One is very much about giving a certain degree, taking the same story elements and giving closure to certain characters. And then the same story elements like opening up and creating a whole new horizon for certain characters.
Although it doesn't really kind of come into it until Star Trek Into Darkness, but the changes that the kind of Kelvin timeline does create a Starfleet that's more sort of militaristic and more defense oriented. Obviously, this Gods and Men takes it to the extreme. It kind of does a kind of mirror universe style, to the point that they put Garrett Wong in basically Kirk's outfit from the mirror universe, and the symbol is kind of like a upside down Starfleet Delta with a Klingon dagger.
So it's not the mirror actual evil universe.
No, it's a different mirror. It's a different evil universe.
It's our universe, but imagine if something truly evil happened. And it is like I feel like the second.
It's like the Confederation in Picard season 2.
Yeah.
So again, it's something that's
But it is interesting that what is such an interesting idea. The idea that if you take a warp starship and you travel so that you try and break out of our galaxy, there are certain human elements that will be susceptible to being elevated to a godlike status, and then they never talk about that in Star Trek again. But then there's this, and then there's also Star Trek Continues as the same sort of story. What if a bunch of humans got wise to that idea and sought specifically that godlike elevation, and then tried to create the Federation in their own image?
Yeah.
There's something
Also,
interesting about that.
On that subject, so I watched Where No Man Has Gone Before again today because I knew Gary Mitchell's in the thing in Gods and Men, so I was like, well, I haven't watched Where No Man Has Gone Before for a long time, let's rewatch it. And obviously one of the key points in the film as to the alternate timeline is that because Kirk isn't born, it's Pike that has to deal with Gary Mitchell, and he dies on the planet. And that, again, that's an element that kind of comes back in modern Star Trek at the end of season 1 of Strange New Worlds, where you put Pike in Kirk's place in Balance of Terror.
Yeah, so it's the episode The Quality of Mercy. And it's what if Pike was still captain of the Enterprise during the events of Balance of Terror.
And he had to deal with the Romulans.
The first meeting of the Romulans,
And basically the whole thing is that, well, Pike's a bit more, merciful, and he's a bit softer, quote unquote, than Kirk is. So that ends up triggering a war with the Romulans that leads to all sorts of catastrophe, and that's the thing that convinces Pike that what has to happen. And here it's kind of a similar thing. It's Pike being in command of the Enterprise at that crucial point actually leads to this kind of seismic shift in the Star Trek universe that leads to this kind of weird sort of fascist. Well, it's not even a fascist dictatorship, is it? It's kind of just this kind of domineering.
It harkens back to those very Romanesque worlds that the Enterprise would visit. It's very imperial, yeah.
But I like the whole thing they do with the Vulcan. Like, Vulcan's essentially destroyed because it won't take a side in this conflict.
Yes.
You've got the Rebels and you've got the Federation as it is in that universe. I also love that, just the reveal when you're suddenly... that you go to the Starship Enterprise bridge and there is a Klingon on board who's clearly part of the team, but not in a Worf way in uniform. And it's just like, given $1 million, I'm sure that would have been the most amazing shot in Star Trek history. But even the fan film just pushes the right buttons for me to just go, oh, I see what they've done here. I see what they've done. And there's lots of great moments like that. And I keep coming back to this. There's so much continuity here, but I don't feel like it's an overload. Do you guys?
No,
not at all.
I think you can place as much continuity on it as a fan as you want. You can spend the majority of it spotting who is who. If you're just watching it and you're not that invested in Hollywood Walk of Starring with Star Trek, it's there is not like it was interesting, Mark, that you said that you were watching where no man has gone beforehand. And I was kind of tempted to say you kind of don't have to, like.
No, because they do just recap the whole thing.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to watch how Kirk deals with Gary again.
Yeah.
Which is that he's basically just like, I'm going to shoot him.
Yeah.
And when that fails, he kind of convinces Dr. Dana, that's it. Convinces her to kind of embrace her humanity and kind of confront Gary. And I guess that's kind of what Pike would have done as well. But then actually would Pike have also maybe have just tried to appeal to Gary until the point that he just ends up in the ground.
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting just as a kind of watching it in that perspective. But you're right, you don't have to watch. You don't even have to watch Charlie X, really.
Yeah.
To get it. You get the point that this is a guy who was let down by Captain Kirk and has a grudge to bear. I think the kind of impact of the Uhura and Charlie relationship, I don't think works if you're just coming to this and you don't. But then who's coming to this and they've not watched Charlie X?
This is not
where no
anyone's
man has gone before, and like it's not that audience. Yeah.
The only kind of criticism I would have is with the character of Charlie is why now? Like, why is he now choosing his revenge? And also, it's 12 years after Star Trek Generations. You'd have heard if Kirk had died or not. He was a super space hero.
Yeah.
So he's just been hanging around that quarry the whole time, and his communicators broke or something. I don't know. And
his communicators broke.
Yeah, he's not keeping up to date with the news,
Yeah, exactly. So, in terms of, we've talked quite a lot about our leads. Are there any particular supporting characters that you really want to give shout out and mention to?
I mean, I always love J.G. Hertzler. Martok's one of the best DS9 supporting characters, and he's really good in this. And he's not playing Martok.
No.
Like, it would be very easy for him to just be like, I'll just do General Martok. But, like, it is a slightly different Klingon character.
Yeah, he's called Koval,
like a bullshier, kind of more kind of traditional, kind of like aggro Klingon than Martok.
Yeah, and great Klingon makeup for a fan film too, and nothing like that picture I've sent you of me as a 13-year-old dressed as a Klingon the other day.
That's going to be the episode image. On
yeah, absolutely.
Spotify,
a slightly racially insensitive photograph of me when I was 13.
It was fun seeing Ethan Phillips, and I like that Tim
good.
Russ was so heavily involved in this.
Yeah,
puts in a good Tuvok performance as well as being the director.
I like his Tuvok in this. It's interesting because obviously Tuvok's around at this point. He's because he served with Sulu on the Excelsior. I thought it was interesting what you said about they planned it for Sulu, because I was like, did they also do all the CGI work beforehand? Because obviously you've got the Enterprise B.
Yeah. But it looks
which
like
was
the
also an Excelsior class starship.
Yeah.
So it's just like, that's fine. We can throw Alan Ruck in and just change the Excelsior Enterprise B. But yeah, I think the Tuvok character is great, and I love. There's a point where it's just one of those like really fun fan film get-arounds where Tuvok says to Uhura, it's like, "Oh, well, you've got your meeting with Spock later this evening," and then Alan Ruck just lays waste to Vulcan. So, well, you're not going to see Spock. Sorry, everyone.
They do go to great pains at the beginning to say why the rest of the Enterprise crew couldn't make it, owing to the fact that at least 2 of them were dead at that point, and no one's getting Shatner.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out that as well as the general Enterprise sets being from Star Trek New Voyages, some of the Star Trek New Voyages crew make cameos. So the guy that plays Peter Kirk, James Cawley, is the actor who plays James Kirk, Captain Kirk in the New Voyages.
Right. Really?
And there's like a Vulcan guy that's on the alternate universe bridge.
Yeah, the helmsman.
Yeah, so that is the New Voyages guy who plays Spock. So they're all dotted around. And there's I think the guy who plays McCoy is in there somewhere as a Klingon, so you don't really recognize him. But all of those guys are in there as well. So it's amazing that it's one Star Trek fan production helping out another star. Like this would not have been feasible if there was not a renaissance, and I can't believe I've said the word fucking renaissance when it talks about Star Trek fan films, but if there had not been that maturity of Star Trek fan films, we wouldn't have had this attempt at television, which is what they're aiming for.
I think also, obviously people like Terry Matalas have been watching stuff like this.
Yeah.
Because the idea of you rebuild the Constitution class Enterprise as a museum piece.
Yeah.
That's in Picard season 3.
Yeah.
And then that informs the kind of reconstruction of the Enterprise D, I guess, in a way as well.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you can rebuild these ships because it's about what the ship represents. It doesn't have to be the ship itself.
Yeah.
It's the kind of reproduction, and also just the whole Peter Kirk thing, because you forget that like Kirk has a nephew out there.
Kirk has a brother and Kirk has a nephew.
But they kill his brother off in like the end of season 1,
Yeah.
don't they? In Operation Annihilate.
Yeah.
And his sister-in-law. But there's the whole thing of like the kids on board the Enterprise while they're dealing with the kind of weird jellyfish thing.
Yeah.
And then he's never heard of again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's remarkable how unattached all of the original series crew is, and how there's an attempt to make them attached now.
I think the movies does a good job at actually kind of bringing those people together as like a family and as a crew.
Yeah. In the original series, I don't think you ever really get the feeling that any of these people are particularly that attached to each other.
No, they just all work together.
Yeah, and occasionally
that's kind of the vibe, isn't it?
They have a laugh at the end of an episode because somebody makes a funny joke, but it's like it's very much an office-based friendship. But
Yes.
You do get a sense of deepening friendships when it comes to like series 3.
Yeah.
Which is like a lot of people write off the third series of Star Trek and Fred Freiberg as the producer instead of Gene Roddenberry. But if there's one thing he is good at, is that he definitely starts setting up like deeper character dynamics that eventually pay off in the movies. That's completely unintentional. But like you saw an episode like say the Tholian Web where Kirk disappears. So there's whole scenes where Spock and McCoy are finally admitting being their friends, and you know,
is that season 3?
Tholian Web is season 3, yeah.
Fucking that's like, I think that's up there as one of the great episodes.
Yeah, it is.
Star Trek.
And there are more series 3 episodes that you like than you realize.
Yeah.
Fred Freiberg was a good producer for Star Trek, and he never gets that. This is Dylan. This is proper deep dive Star Trek opinion. This is exactly what
this is
Too
the point
Hot
at which
for
Ben and I go,
TV is.
actually, do you know what? Sack off in the Timelash. Let's do a Star Trek podcast.
Let's do this.
There you go. But this is why I wanted to do these things, because this is not my world. It's good to sort of get invested in the lore and the opinions that I don't know what opinions are right or wrong.
So it's generally considered that Series 3 of Star Trek is a bit of a write-off.
Yeah, I
would heartily argue against that. Because, like you're saying, a lot of those friendships don't exist in Series 1, but they do by the end of, like Series 3, they do. You know, like you get friendships between, like, Scotty and McCoy. as much as the very last episode of Star Trek, Turnabout Intruder, is this bizarre...
It's fucking terrible.
It is terrible. But the whole point of it is, or the kind of the underlying story that it is that the crew of the Enterprise encounter something ridiculous, kooky, but they still have to go through a methodical analysis of the situation because they can't just, like we Star Trek viewers, accept that kooky shit happens on a weekly basis. And so you get great character interactions. You know, like Scotty and McCoy are the only people who are unaffected by, you know, one fucking manipulation by one character or another. So you have these great character moments where they're talking to each other as friends and confidants. It's very deep character food. You know, I'm talking fucking shit now. I'm absolutely blowing it out of my arse now. Like
I say I watched The Voyage Home. I stuck it on in the background while I was packing to move house a couple of weeks ago, and I just got wrapped into it because I was like, oh yeah, you know, it's a fun comedy, I'll, you know, pick up and stuff. But I just kept stopping and just like watching long stretches of it because it's great. And what I'd kind of forgotten about The Voyage Home is how great those scenes are with Scotty and McCoy going to that factory.
Yeah.
And also, DeForest Kelly pronounces Edinburgh correctly.
Yeah.
There's no Edinburgh.
It's not
There's
that.
no
It's
Edinburgh.
Edinburgh.
He goes, oh yeah, this is Mr. Montgomery Scott from Edinburgh.
From the University of Edinburgh. Like,
yes.
Brilliant.
Do you think there's a sense with the films that people are more invested in the characters by this point, and indeed the actors, I mean, because they've been playing them for so long, whereas, again, we come back to this sort of office-based relationship. They're just playing the characters week in, week out on syndicated television.
And I think Wrath of Khan, forever, because I think I would have pitched this article if somebody hadn't already come up with the idea, but with Picard season 3, I think it's like episode 2 or something, I wanted to kind of pitch the idea that it finally understands actually what's good about Wrath of Khan, and it's not the revenge element. It's, you know, it's about getting older and recognizing that these people that you spent so much of your time with in a kind of working relationship are actually kind of as close to a family unit as maybe you've kind of avoided that in your kind of personal life. And actually these people are there for you, and these people will continue to be there for you. And I think both Picard season 3 and Star Trek 2 The Wrath of Khan are about those personal connections. It's not about the revenge, it's not about the big mythological quest or whatever. It's about actually just strengthening the bonds between these characters. So I think Wrath of Khan's a really crucial point, and then you get Search for Spock, where it's Kirk going, we need to go back to the Genesis planet, and I need all of you to just break Starfleet regulations, and they all do it willingly without question
because they're doing it for one of the fam.
Because they exactly.
Well, to circle it round a little bit back to Of Gods and Men, the relationship between Chekhov and Uhura here, obviously it's an alt universe, but how much interaction do they have in the classic series, the original series, sorry, we're not talking about the original series in the movie. Like, are they two characters you would automatically think, let's stick them together in a fan film or a sequel?
No, not really. So the interesting thing about Walter Koenig is that Chekhov he's not in the first series. He's a purely second series onwards character. And generally what will happen is you will have that Kirk, Spock and McCoy, and then you'll have one other of those other 4 Sulu, Scotty, Uhura, Chekhov characters who are involved in whatever story they're involved in.
Right.
You don't really ever get one of the 4 secondary characters, or 2 of them off on their other together.
The only one I can think of, is it the Gamesters of Triskelion or something, where it's like Kirk, Chekhov and Uhura?
That's the only one I can think where they get
the one episode,
like two interactions, the 2 of them interacting together. And even when you get into the films, they don't really interact. There was a weird attempt to pair Scotty and Uhura off in Star Trek V.
But then Voyage Home's got it's Chekhov and Uhura that are paired together.
That's really the only time you get it, yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah.
It's such a laugh.
Looking for the nuclear vessels, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's about it. I mean, we're talking about, like, was it 3 instances that we can remember of those two characters. It's more a reflection of how they're perceived by fandom, which is you've got Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. You've kind of got Scotty as this interim cat. He can either be part of that command structure or he can be part of those kind of 4 secondary characters. But of those it's Uhura, Chekhov, and Sulu that are, as actors and as characters, they occupy a little strata all to themselves.
Well, it's great to see them sort of, and actually now you said that, it makes me a little sad that they couldn't get George Takei for whatever reason, because it would have been nice to have the movie for those 3 supporting characters. Do we have much more we want to say on Of Gods and Men?
It's immensely enjoyable. It's
really enjoyable, yeah.
I was actually surprised.
Really surprised, actually.
That's interesting. We said that exactly at the same time.
Yeah, we did, didn't we?
I love you, Mark. What?
But yeah.
Oh my God, did I say that?
I was genuinely surprised by how much I enjoyed it. Which is weird because, I watched all manner of shite Doctor Who fan films, so why would I not
enjoy a good one?
Like, do you know what I mean? Why would I not watch a Star Trek fan film? And actually, I watched this one. I was like, this is a damn sight better than a lot of the Doctor Who stuff I've watched, so why am I not watching more of these?
Yeah, it's definitely the best fan film I've seen. In terms of, I've watched a fair amount of Doctor Who ones back in the day, but I don't really watch them anymore. I've seen a lot of Terminator ones, and oh boy, if you want to see some shit.
Oh wow, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Oh, there's bloody loads of them. And
are you doing Terminator 2 Hot for TV?
I mean, I will do if somebody wants to do it, I will do it. It is my second favourite franchise after Doctor Who, so I am the only person I know that likes Terminator as much as I do. So it'll be a monologue. But yeah, Terminator fan films, because they can never afford to have a Terminator that is like an endoskeleton.
Yeah, that must be quite tough.
So it's always someone in a hood with red eyes, and then they hire a shit actor who's muscular to play it in human forms, and it never works. Anyway, this isn't Terminator 2 Hot for TV.
I'll tell you what, I've got one final thought. This is the first time I saw Of Gods and Men, and I really enjoyed it. I wish I had seen it back when it was first released. I wish I'd been interested. After Enterprise, I kind of drifted away from Star Trek because that was when
Doctor Who was like.
Well, so I started going to the Edinburgh Doctor Who group on the day that Star Trek Nemesis came out in the UK. Sean and I went to Star Trek Nemesis. We knew it was the end of Star Trek, and we went to. We knew it was like the death knell, the death rattle of Star Trek, and we went along, and I wanted to start.
There was still 2 years of Enterprise after that. How dare
there
you?
was, but it was like at that point it was Nemesis and like the first couple of series of Enterprise, and they were not.
Yeah.
Like they were not inspiring. It got better. It certainly got better, but it was very bland when it started, and it certainly felt like this is like things are taking over and bettering and making Star Trek irrelevant. It felt like that. So what better way than to go looking for other like-minded individuals who are into what seemed like a fully dead sci-fi franchise, Doctor Who, and hang out with them in a pub on a Monday night. I did like Star Trek, and I did miss it in that period between the proper relaunch of it, like Discovery, of it being a like an official Star Trek television series, rather than just a movie every now and again. I wish I'd seen Of Gods and Men then. Like, I feel like I would have gotten a lot rather than kind of approaching it as a bit of a curio for a podcast, seeing it as if it were a kind of torchlight for fandom in a period where Star Trek could, whatever the next iteration of Star Trek, because it was never going to die, it was never going to fully die and never come back again, whatever the next version of Star Trek was going to be, I imagine watching it, this felt like this could be it. Like this, it could be this. It could be former Star Trek actors making it for fans, so as a web series, hopefully garnering kind of Paramount Pictures backing.
It's very much the Airzone solution of its time, really, isn't it?
Not necessarily that, because Airzone was obviously actors, but like beings, like it wasn't necessarily Doctor Who, but there was something that I could imagine me watching it back then. It would have felt, I would have
Fresh.
eaten this with a fucking wooden spoon, just ladling it into my face.
Actually, after watching this, I was like, I really want to watch Renegades now.
Yeah, me too.
And that has better production values.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, I've seen bits and pieces of it.
Yeah.
Like I say, when I was writing that Gary Graham obit thing. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be watching more Star Trek fan films off the back of this, because I think, especially if the writing is as nuanced and as kind of in touch with those characters and kind of giving those characters a kind of life outside of what you already know, but that still feels... Because actually, yeah, like, you know, Uhura as captain of sort of Starfleet linguistics, sort of going to Vulcan and kind of trying to sort of make a life for herself there, that kind of all makes sense. And,
Yeah.
and again, if we're going to bring it back to things that Star Trek 2009 ripped off from this, Uhura in a relationship with a Vulcan.
Yeah.
Yeah, very true, very true.
Although
J.J. Abrams must answer for his crimes.
And here he is now.
it is worth pointing out that certain Star Trek productions got well above themselves and started trying to make a profit from the Star Trek name, which prompted Paramount Pictures to change the rules of how they licensed or how they legally looked upon fan productions.
They ruined it for everyone.
Yeah,
essentially.
it was Star Trek Axanar was the production.
Yeah.
Which then led to, so they made an episode of Renegades, the spin-off from this, Star Trek Renegades, and then made a second episode purely called Renegades, where all mention or reference to Star Trek was removed because they just weren't allowed to, which if anything feels like it brings us full circle back to Spock versus Q, where they were obviously not allowed to make any mention of Star Trek property out with the bodies of John Delancey and Leonard Nimoy.
Very true. So, is it a clanger, a banger, or an average meander?
Oh, this is a banger. This is a full-on banger.
I agree. It's a banger from me too.
Yep, it's a banger for me.
Too hot for TV.
Thank you so much for joining me on this first outing for Too Hot for TV that is not Doctor Who related. Let's see how this goes down, eh? And if it goes down well, maybe we'll be back here for something else in a few months. Who knows? But I don't know if before we go away, you want to plug your reinvigorated and renewed podcast.
Sure. I mean, we've it's that thing, like in the episode itself, we'll be like, oh no, we're not going to do this every time. But people seem to have like taken to them. Oh, maybe we should. I don't know. But basically, we've redone. So we did On The Timelash. We're now doing In The Timelash, in which we invite a guest each episode to submit 4 or 5 things that they don't like about Doctor Who, be that sort of cultural myths, sort of tired tropes, things like that. We invite them to submit that to be thrown into the Timelash to spend a lochside holiday with H.G. Wells. So that's the format, to quote another Doctor Who podcast. Yeah.
And if anybody out there hasn't checked it out, they should absolutely go and check it out. Next time, I'll be joined by David Gillespie Pratt, and we'll be doing Blake 7, Too Hot for TV, looking at the 2 Radio 4 audios written by Barry Letts, The Sevenfold Crown and The Cinderton Experiment. So, more exciting spin-offery coming soon. But until then, I've been Dylan.
I've been Ben.
And I've been Mark.
And this has been Star Trek Too Hot for TV.
Okay, here we go. Beyond the rim of the starlight, my love is wandering in star flight. I know he'll find in star-clustered riches love, strange love a star woman teaches. And I know his journey ends never. His Star Trek must go on forever. But tell him as he wanders the starry sea, remember me.
Star Trek too hot for TV.
It's whoa! I was so excited by that. I just dropped my beer.
Do you need a second?
I'm just gonna grab a towel. But thankfully, because we moved, there's towels everywhere. Give me 2 seconds.
There we go. Let's slag him off while he's not here, and then stick it in the podcast after all.
Yeah, this is the cold open.
Yeah, the beer spilling prick.
I like the juxtaposition for Mark of like the new age media that he's got.
Yeah.
And then like the proper like 1920s door that like with those you know, like that kind of just that bit too high up door handle.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I can hear every fucking word you've said.
just,
It wasn't real.
It wasn't real. Sorry, hang on. 2 more seconds.
I've just got something to show you actually. I can't remember. I may have shown you these before, but I'm trying to find the 3. Do you know what these are?
oh, Starburst magazine? What is it?
Is that Bruce Boxleitner?
Yeah, so they did 3 VHS tapes.
Yeah.
The first one's hosted by John Pertwee, and I can't find it. And it's basically like a video magazine. So Bruce, what's his face, is hosting that one. George Takei is hosting that one.
Brilliant.
And it's got an interview with Philip Siegel on here. It's got stuff about the X-Files, the launch of the Sci-Fi Channel. It's got Star Wars Revisited.
I would give anything to go back to be a sci-fi fan in the 90s.
And have money, disposable income.
And have money and just knowing what was going to come out.
Yeah.
Like it just, I don't know. Like with Netflix, with streaming television, we are absolutely spoiled. There's never been more of a choice and excellent production value of any fantastical element or show that you love. But it was just better in the 90s.
Well, it's that thing of not being able to find everything. It's not like I've got Paramount Plus. It's got the whole of Star Trek on it, pretty much.
Yeah.
You know, there's a few little bits missing. At any point, I can put on an episode of Voyager that I've never seen or whatever, and sit there and watch it. But in the 90s, the idea that there was loads of Star Trek out there that you'd never seen was somehow more magical than the thought of it
was
all
the
being
fight.
there.
I think I said this to you, Mark, is that like Dylan, you like there was a period where like every week you would have like a new Wii transfer, and it was like 1,000 gigabytes of stuff that you've never seen before, and it's just there suddenly, and I'm like, no, I can't. Like, there's no challenge anymore. I'm just this fat whale of a fan. I just get it channeled into my face. There's no achievement if I get hold of something. Because it's just so like I just had to be like, okay, I'm going to make a point. You know, that's why Spock versus Q. I was like, I'm going to use an audible credit for it. I want to feel like I've fought for it in some small way. I need to get back to that kind of, you know.
I think that's why none of us give a fuck about Doctor Who. Like, Americans seeing Doctor Who before us.
No, I know. It's what.
It's like, mate, I fucking grew up in the 90s where, like, I'd have to get 4 Simpsons episodes on one tape, or fucking 2 episodes of Star Trek on one tape.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea how expensive that was?
If I wanted to keep up with America,
conceited little shit,
then I had to pay $16.99 every couple of weeks to get 2 episodes on VHS down at fucking Virgin Megastore.
Do you know what it's like to go into a shop and there be 2 Doctor Who books, a new video, a Mythmakers, a BBV, some big hardback book, and you've got £5 and you can buy one of those, and that's it. And you know it's not going to get you the videos.
It's not.
So it's like,
Fuck off.
Yeah.
and this is what you've got to do. This is what you've got to wait for. You've got to decide, and you may never see those books again because they don't stay in the shop forever. And that was one of the things I really remember. The two sort of nerdy shots in Birmingham when there'd be things that you'd have an eye on, but you needed to get other things first, and then one day they'd just be gone, and they were no longer in the shop.
This idea of no spoilers is new. It's new to fandom.
Yeah.
You know, because when we were growing up, and I know I sound like the oldest fuck in the room, when we were growing up, spoilers was the only thing you cared about. Like, you actually needn't see the episode if you knew what was going to happen. All you needed to do was like split the little sealed center of SFX magazine and then read what was going to happen in the X-Files, or read what was happening in Xena Warrior Princess or Star Trek Voyager, and you're like, you know what, if I see the episode, fine, fucking whatever, you know.
But this is it. But those things, it was always cold, hard story details.
Yeah.
Because I remember reading the spoiler zone when Buffy season 2 was going out in America. Because I think Buffy was quite close in dates in the UK. It wasn't like in the old days where you'd have to wait like 3 years before Star Trek The Next Generation started in the UK. And I remember reading the episode where like Angel fucking turns evil in series 2 and he snaps Giles's girlfriend's neck. I was like, oh my god, that sounds so exciting.
Yeah.
But now I have to wait,
I know
another
this.
couple of months until I get to see that.
I will have forgotten this by the time I actually watch it.
But I know there's a really exciting thing coming up, and it kind of keeps you sated.
Yeah. The only spoiler I refrained from consuming over the last year for Doctor Who was the 2 guest cast of Wild Blue Yonder, and I wish I'd relented because it set me up with a fucking false promise of.
And I found out who they were, and I offered.
Yeah,
I did offer.
No. I said no, but
and I said it's not going to ruin anything for you. You're like, no.
But it was still a good episode regardless. But for the first half an hour, I was like, oh, well, someone's going to show up any minute now. And then I was like, no, it's just these two. It's just these two.
We're very dangerously into Doctor Who podcast again. But the funny thing about Wild Blue Yonder is everybody's disappointment, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, and Russell T Davies put it best, where it's just like, well, what the fuck were we supposed to do? If we put a synopsis and a cast list, which was just like the Doctor, David Tennant, Donna, Catherine Tate, Evil Doctor, David Tennant, Evil Donna.
Yeah, no. You can't win. Should we talk more about Star Trek?
Yes.
Yeah. Although I feel like I need to. I can't remember what I was saying when I dropped my beer. Anyway, there's a really nice emotional nuance.
Too hot for TV.